The polished mahogany desk held the answers Leo was hunting for. But the file folders threatened to reveal the one person who had killed his mother. 13 hours earlier, the rain had been streaking the windows of the archives office like tears the glass couldn't shed. Leo sat at his father's heavy mahogany desk, magnifying glass gripped tight in his left hand, while his right cradled a lukewarm cup of black espresso in a white porcelain cup. The steam had long since dissipated into the still air of the office, mingling with dust that caught the light from the single brass desk lamp. Above him, the grandfather clock ticked with mechanical precision, each second marking another moment deeper into the vault of his father's life. Outside, rain tapped against the windows in a rhythm that matched his heartbeat. He'd been going through the ledgers all morning, the systematic record-keeping of an estate archivist's final client, his own dead father. The old man had been meticulous, obsessively so. Every receipt catalogued, every expenditure annotated. Leo expected to find the mundane architecture of a life: mortgage payments, property taxes, charitable donations to the symphony. What he found instead was a mystery written in faded navy ink. His finger traced a line in the yellowed ledger. June 12th, 1994, $5,000. Cash. Hand delivered to C. Leo turned the page. July 12th. Same amount, same notation. August 12th. The pattern continued, month after month, year after year. A metronomic bleeding of cash to someone or something identified only by a single letter. He leaned closer to the glass, studying the handwriting. His father's hand was sharp and slanted, the mark of a man used to making decisions. "Who is Dad?" Leo whispered to the empty room, as if the old man could answer from wherever the dead keep their secrets. That was when the door exploded inward. The bang of it hitting the wall echoed through the office like a gunshot. Leo's breath caught. A man in a gray hooded sweatshirt burst through the opening, his face hidden behind a black surgical mask, his body already moving with the violence of someone practiced in it. Water dripped from the sweatshirt in dark rivulets. In his right hand, he held a tactical flashlight, the kind designed to disorient or, if swung with intent, to crush. Leo's survival instinct fired before thought could catch up. He lunged across the desk, grabbing the heavy ledger with both hands. The intruder was already moving, already swinging. The flashlight cut through the air like a blade. Leo ducked, but not far enough. It clipped his shoulder with a sickening thud, and pain bloomed from collarbone to elbow. Leo grunted, shoving his chair backward with all his force. It rolled directly into the man's shins. The intruder stumbled, cursed, a sound like gravel under boots, and recovered. Leo's shoulder-length hair flew as he ducked again. He needed a weapon. His fingers found the brass paperweight on his desk, cold and heavy in his palm. Without thinking, without hesitation, he hurled it at the man's chest. The intruder saw it coming but couldn't dodge in time. The paperweight connected with a dull thump, striking him square in the sternum. He hissed in pain and stumbled backward, already retreating. His retreat became a sprint. Boots thundered on the floorboards, echoing down the hallway. Leo watched him go, breathing hard. When silence finally returned to the office, it felt wrong. Too thick, too present. Leo looked down at the ledger still clutched in his hands. His hands were shaking. He waited 5 minutes before moving. Then he stood, shoulders burning, and locked the office door with trembling fingers. The gallery was all white walls and spotlights by the time Leo arrived, clutching a manila envelope. Elena stood on a stepladder, adjusting a large abstract painting, red and black smears on canvas that probably cost more than Leo's apartment. She wore a crisp white linen suit, the uniform of her carefully constructed life. The echo of Leo's shoes on the marble floor made her turn. "Don't look at me like that," Elena said, still balanced on the ladder. "Whatever you want, I already said no." Leo pulled the ledger out without preamble and opened it to the entries marked with C. He pointed at the repeated monthly payments. $5,000 like clockwork for 30 years. Elena climbed down from the ladder with jerky, uncoordinated movements. Her face had gone the color of old porcelain. She reached him in 3 quick strides and grabbed his hand, pushing the ledger shut with both palms pressed against its cover. Her fingers were icy and trembling. "Burn it," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Terrified. "Everything Dad kept hidden. It ruins us, Leo. The gallery, your career, our names, everything. That's what the Guardian does. He protects the secret by holding it over our heads." Leo looked at his sister, really looked at her, and saw a woman who had been paying for silence since she was 30 years old. He didn't know what was worse, that she'd known all these years, or that she'd paid willingly. "I can't do this anymore," he said, sliding both ledgers into the manila envelope. Elena grabbed his wrist. "Whatever you're thinking of doing, stop. There are people—" But he was already walking toward the door. The parking garage was mostly empty at night, the kind of underground space that seemed to exist in permanent shadow. Leo's footsteps echoed sharply as he walked toward his silver sedan, briefcase still in one hand. Thoughts scattered across everything Elena had said and everything she hadn't. Behind him, tires screeched. Leo turned. A black SUV with heavily tinted windows was accelerating toward him, headlights blazing like eyes wide open. There was a moment of pure animal panic. No thought, just terror and movement. Leo dived between 2 parked cars just as the SUV slammed into his sedan's door. The collision was tremendous. Metal crumpled like paper. Glass exploded outward in 1,000 glittering pieces. The impact rattled the concrete beneath Leo's palms as he rolled, his skin scraping against the greasy floor. Pain shot up his hands and knees. The SUV reversed with a mechanical scream of tires. It was coming back for another pass. Leo's eyes found a fire extinguisher mounted on the nearby column. He scrambled to his feet, his left shoulder screaming in protest, grabbed the heavy red cylinder and hurled it as hard as he could. The extinguisher hit the SUV's windshield dead center. The glass cracked but didn't shatter. A spiderweb of damage across the safety glass. The SUV didn't hesitate. It accelerated toward the garage exit, tail lights disappearing into the night. Leo stood in the debris of the parking structure, breathing hard, bleeding from both palms. That was when he saw it, glinting under the fluorescent lights. A small object on the concrete near his destroyed sedan. A silver tie clip with an Art Deco engraving, the stylized letter M. He picked it up, turned it over in his palm. The metal was still warm. The letter M, he'd seen it before, worn by only one man in the family's orbit. His father's oldest friend, Uncle Marcus. Marcus's study smelled of old money and older cigars. The fire roared in the marble fireplace, throwing orange light across the wood-paneled room. Marcus sat in a green wingback chair, swirling golden whiskey in a crystal glass. He didn't look up when Leo entered, didn't register surprise or anger or guilt. He simply kept rotating the glass, watching the ice spin. Leo slammed the tie clip onto the low coffee table. "Where is it?" Leo demanded. "Where did you get it?" Marcus smiled, a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "A woman at the gallery said you might visit. I thought it best to clarify a few things." "Clarify?" Leo's voice was rising. "You tried to kill me. You threw someone at me with a flashlight. I tried to stop you from being an idiot," Marcus said, finally looking up. The fire caught the deep scar running from his ear to his jaw, a jagged white line that made half his face look like it had been sewn back together. Your father wasn't a saint, Leo. He paid to keep a ghost in a cage. Now the cage is breaking. Leo wanted to lunge across the room. He gripped the edge of a side table instead, his knuckles white. Marcus pulled a pocket watch from his vest and clicked it open. Roman numerals marked the face. The time was 11:45 p.m. "If the next payment isn't made by midnight," Marcus said, his voice dropping to something cold and flat, "the Guardian releases the files to the press. Elena loses her gallery. You lose your name. Both of you lose your lives as you know them. They'll tear through your reputation like jackals." Leo's phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out to find a message from an unknown number. "I'm watching your sister." Below the text was a photograph. Elena in a bar, a martini untouched on the table in front of her. Behind her, barely in focus, a man in a gray hoodie, the same one from the archive office. Marcus didn't speak. He simply pushed a heavy black duffel bag toward Leo with his foot. It clunked with the sound of something dense and valuable. "The cash is inside. 42nd Street subway. There's a maintenance door, third pillar from the north entrance. You'll know what to do when you get there." Leo stared at the bag. "Do it now," Marcus said. And it wasn't a request. The subway platform was a cathedral of concrete and fluorescent light. A hollow space beneath the city, where the air smelled like rust and old electricity. Leo stood by a pillar smeared with layers of graffiti. Red tags over blue tags over black tags. Years of people claiming space in a place that belonged to no one. The duffel bag hung from his right hand, and he gripped the handle until his knuckles turned white. Above him, a train rumbled past, shaking dust from the ceiling like snow in reverse. That was when the maintenance door opened. Two figures emerged from the shadows, the kind of men who made the space smaller by simply existing in it. The first one brandished a lead pipe, the metal dull gray under the yellow lights. The second one had brass knuckles on both fists, the knuckles worn smooth from use. Their footsteps splashed in the shallow puddles that had accumulated on the platform floor. Leo didn't think. He swung the duffel bag like a flail, putting all his body weight into the arc. It connected with the pipe wielder's head with a sound like a baseball bat meeting a melon. The man spun, stumbled, crashed into a trash can. The trash can toppled with a deafening clang that echoed through the tunnel. The second man came at Leo hard, fists already moving. A punch came straight at Leo's ribs. He buckled under the impact, his breath exploding out of him, but his hands found the man's throat. He drove him backward, using his momentum, slamming the man's head against the tiled wall. The 42nd Street sign on the wall cracked where the impact registered. Blood smear bloomed on the white tile. Behind them, a whistle sounded, sharp and authoritative. Leo looked deeper into the tunnel and saw more figures moving in the shadows, moving toward them. Leo grabbed the duffel bag and ran. His apartment looked like it had been hit by a bomb. The door hung off its hinges. The sofa was slashed, foam spilling out like entrails. Books were ripped into confetti. The blueprints were gone. His mother's photograph, the one he kept on the mantel, showing her laughing at something the camera could never capture, was ground into glass. On the kitchen island, an iPad was playing a video on loop. Leo moved toward it like a man walking through water. The image showed Elena tied to a chair in a concrete basement, her hands bound behind her back. Marcus stood behind the chair, one hand on her shoulder. Her mascara was streaked down her face. The audio crackled to life. "Family is a burden, Leo. Come drop yours off at the foundation, 5th and Main. 30 minutes or she's part of the concrete." The video looped. Elena tied to the chair, Marcus's hand on her shoulder. "The concrete basement walls." Repeat. Leo turned away and walked to the bedroom. He moved the rug aside with his foot, revealing a small safe built into the floor. He knew the combination because his father had made him memorize it 15 years ago. During a conversation that had never made sense until now, the safe clicked open. Inside was a service pistol, a gun his father had never mentioned owning. Leo checked the magazine. 15 rounds of 9mm hollow points, each one a small, perfect bullet. He racked the slide, chambering the first round. He stood in the middle of the wreckage of his apartment and looked at his reflection in a shattered mirror. His face was his father's face, but without the fear that had always lived in his father's eyes. The fear was gone now, replaced by something colder and more certain. Thunder broke outside, the first real storm rolling in from the east. The construction site basement smelled like dust and rust and the acrid chemical scent of fresh concrete. The floor was a maze of rebar sticking up like spears, like the ribs of some half-buried beast. A vast pit held a churning mixer, gray concrete swirling in the drum like something alive. Marcus stood beside it, wearing an expensive suit that now looked like a costume, and he was smiling. When Leo entered, a henchman stepped from behind a pillar and executed a low sweep kick. Leo's legs went out from under him, and he fell hard, the impact knocking the wind from his lungs. Before he could move, hands ripped the pistol from his waistband. He was forced to his knees in the dirt. Dust rose around him, coating his skin. They brought Elena out. She had a strip of silver duct tape across her mouth, her jaw working against it, her hands cuffed behind her back. The cuffs were professional grade, the kind used by police. Marcus held a remote control, the kind used for industrial equipment. A chute above them, a massive yellow thing, hung like a guillotine. Marcus walked over and kicked Leo in the face. Leo's head snapped backward. Pain exploded from his jaw. Blood sprayed from his nose in a fine mist, landing on the dry dirt like a message from his own body. Marcus leaned down, his scarred face inches from Leo's. "Your father's silence bought you 30 years," Marcus said, his voice carrying the kind of certainty that comes from a man who believes he has won. "Your noise just bought you a grave." The chute above them began to move, hydraulics hissing. The metal tube repositioned itself, aiming directly at the hole Leo knelt beside. Concrete was already starting to move through the system, gravity pulling it down toward the opening. There was no escape. His sister was captive. He was disarmed and on his knees. Marcus held all the cards, and all of them were aces. The chute lowered another foot. Leo laughed. It was a wet, bloody sound, a sound that didn't belong in this basement. Marcus paused, his thumb hovering over the button. The hydraulics fell silent for a moment, just long enough for doubt to register across Marcus's scarred face. "You forgot the ledger's micro-pitting, Marcus," Leo said, his voice steady despite the blood pooling under his tongue. "I scanned every page. Your father didn't just keep receipts. He kept an audio log. It wasn't true, not technically, but it was believable enough, and that was all Leo needed." Marcus's eye twitched. In that moment of distraction, Leo reached into his boot. The titanium stylus, a specialized tool of his trade, sharp and harder than bone, came out like a blade. He jammed it into the foot of the henchman holding him. The man screamed, a sound of pure animal pain. His grip loosened. Leo lunged upward, grabbing the fallen pistol from the dirt where it had been dropped. He fired 3 times. The bullets ripped into the concrete mixer's control panel. Sparks showered the floor. The machine made a sound like metal shrieking, and then it stopped. The grinding halted. The chute froze mid-descent. Leo didn't hesitate. He grappled with Marcus, and they tumbled toward the pit. Leo was smaller but younger, and he moved with the desperation of a man with nothing left to lose. He used a wrestler's bridge, arching his back and throwing his weight. Marcus went over his head, his expensive suit tearing on the lip of the pit. His legs slipped into the wet concrete. He struggled. The concrete was heavy, pulling at him, his legs sinking. Leo ran to Elena. The stylist made quick work of the handcuffs. The duct tape came away from her mouth in one sharp motion. She gasped, her lungs pulling in air like she was drowning in it. "Come on," Leo said, taking her hand. They were halfway to the exit when sirens began to wail outside. The automated alarm from the damaged control panel had called the police. Blue and red light started reflecting on the rebar, painting everything in colors of warning and safety, of danger and rescue. Colors that meant this was ending in ways that couldn't be controlled anymore. They sat on a wooden bench in the precinct hallway, wrapped in gray police blankets. Elena held a paper cup of coffee, her hand still shaking enough that it sloshed slightly with each micro-tremor. Leo stared at the opposite wall, at a bulletin board covered with missing persons flyers that no one ever looked at. A detective approached and handed Leo a small evidence bag. Inside was a gold wedding ring. Leo looked at it for a long moment. His father's wedding ring, recovered from the archive office. He held the bag up to the fluorescent light and saw what most people would miss: a tiny, nearly invisible seam running around the band. He twisted it. The ring opened. A micro SD card fell into his palm, smaller than a fingernail, heavy with secrets. 20 minutes later, Leo had the card plugged into his phone. A single folder appeared on the screen. For the children. When silence breaks. Inside were dozens of video files, each one time-stamped. Leo pressed play on the first one. His father's face filled the screen. Older than Leo remembered him, but smiling with the kind of warmth that only a father can manage. "Hello, Leo. Hello, Elena. If you're watching this, then the silence has finally broken. I've been documenting everything Marcus did, everything he threatened for 20 years. Every payment, every threat, every reason why I couldn't tell you." Elena leaned against Leo's shoulder. Neither of them moved. The videos continued, one after another. A man's voice preserved in digital amber, speaking to his children from beyond the grave. Confessions. Evidence. A case built methodically, brick by brick, over 2 decades. "I hired someone," their father said in another video. "A private security firm. They use his money, the money we've been paying, to watch you both. They call themselves the Guardian. They're not his people. They're ours. They've been ours all along." Leo and Elena looked at each other. All those years they weren't being hunted, They were being watched over. The park bench overlooked the bridge they'd stood on only days before. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple that seemed too vivid to be natural. Elena held Leo's hand. Her grip was firm now, the trembling gone. "I knew," Elena said quietly, "about the payments. I've known since I was 12. Leo turned to look at her. "I thought it was my fault," she continued. "I thought he'd done something to protect me, and I needed to keep paying to keep us safe. I never asked. I just kept sending the money." Leo pulled the ledger from his bag. He took out a box of matches from his pocket and struck one. The small flame caught the corner of the page. The paper caught fire immediately, eager to burn, as if it had been waiting for this moment for decades. The ledger went up in flames, the pages curling as the ink. All those careful notations, all those secrets written in his father's precise hand, turned to ash. They sat on the bench and watched it burn. neither of them speaking until there was nothing left but gray powder. "No more secrets," Leo said, his voice steady. "Not ever again." Elena nodded against his shoulder. The ash blew away in the wind, dispersing across the park and into the city, each flake a piece of the old life dissolving into air. Leo and Elena stood up together. They walked away from the bench, away from the bridge, away from everything that had been. Their footsteps sounded on the gravel path, two people moving in sync toward the golden light of the dying day. Leo looked down at his father's ring on his finger. It was no longer a container for secrets, no longer a burden to carry. It was simply a ring, a small circle of gold that marked continuity, that proved a man had lived and loved and fought in the darkness so that his children might live in the light. The wind carried the last of the ash away into the city,